April 18th, 1942. 8:20 a.m. Pacific Time. The aircraft carrier USS Hornet pitches and rolls in heavy seas 650 miles east of Tokyo, 200 miles farther than planned. On the flight deck, 16 B-25 Mitchell bombers sit with engines roaring, their 75-foot wingspans barely fitting the carrier deck with 5 feet to spare on each side. Lieutenant Colonel James Harold Jimmy Doolittle climbs into the lead aircraft. At 45 years old, he's too old for this mission by regulations, too senior by rank, too valuable to risk. But he insisted on leading personally. If he's sending men on what might be a suicide mission, he'll go first. 4 months after Pearl Harbor, America hasn't struck back. 4 months of defeat, retreat, and humiliation. The Philippines are falling. Wake Island has fallen. Singapore, Hong Kong, the Dutch East Indies, all conquered. The Japanese Empire seems unstoppable. But in 16 seconds, as Doolittle's B-25 lifts off the pitching carrier deck with just feet to spare, America's war in the Pacific transforms from defensive to offensive. This raid won't win the war. Militarily, it's almost meaningless. But psychologically, strategically, it changes everything. This is the story of 80 men, 16 aircraft, and the most audacious air raid in history. A mission so impossible that when first proposed, it was dismissed as fantasy. Yet it succeeded, transforming American morale, Japanese strategy, and the course of the Pacific War. This is the Doolittle Raid. To understand why the Doolittle Raid matters, we must understand America's desperation in early 1942. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. 8 battleships sunk or damaged, over 2,400 Americans dead, the Pacific Fleet crippled, America thrust into war unprepared, shocked, and reeling. The months that follow bring only more disaster. December 10th, Japanese sink HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse. Britain's only capital ships in the Far East, December 25th. Hong Kong surrenders after 18-day siege, January 2nd. Manila falls. MacArthur retreats to Bataan, February 15th. Singapore surrenders. 70,000 British Empire troops captured, March 9th. Dutch East Indies surrenders. Japan secures vital oil resources, April 9th. Bataan falls. 76,000 American and Filipino troops begin death march. The map tells a horrifying story. 4 months of uninterrupted Japanese conquest. A defensive perimeter stretching from Burma to the Gilbert Islands. American forces pushed back to Australia and Midway. The rising sun flag flies over 1/6 of the Earth's surface. American morale plummets. Headlines scream defeat after defeat. Families worry about loved ones in Japanese POW camps. War production struggles to ramp up. Military leaders scramble to establish defensive lines. President Franklin Roosevelt and his military chiefs face both strategic and psychological crises. Strategically, they must stop Japanese expansion before it becomes unstoppable. Psychologically, America needs hope, proof that Japan isn't invincible, that the United States can strike back. In January 1942, Navy Captain Francis Lowe walks past Chesapeake Bay and sees a runway painted on the ground where pilots practice carrier landings. A crazy idea strikes him. What if Army bombers could take off from Navy carriers? The idea sounds absurd. Army bombers are too big, too heavy for carrier operations. Carriers launch and recover naval aircraft, fighters, dive bombers, torpedo planes. Army bombers need long runways. The physics seem impossible. But Lowe takes the idea to Admiral Ernest King, Chief of Naval Operations. King, known for his aggressive mindset, loves it. He passes it to Admiral William Halsey, who's even more aggressive. Within days, the concept reaches General Henry Hap Arnold, commanding the Army Air Forces. Arnold summons Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle to his office. James Harold Doolittle is already a legend in aviation. MIT doctorate in aeronautics, winner of virtually every air racing trophy. First pilot to fly coast to coast in less than 24 hours. Pioneer of instrument flying. Test pilot who proved aircraft could fly safely in zero visibility. Shell Oil executive turned military officer after Pearl Harbor. At 45, he's older than most combat pilots by 20 years. His peacetime heroics are legendary, but he's never seen combat. Now Arnold offers him the most dangerous assignment imaginable. The concept: load Army B-25 Mitchell medium bombers onto a Navy aircraft carrier, sail within range of Japan, launch the bombers to strike Tokyo and other cities, then fly to China where friendly forces will provide refuge. Every aspect presents seemingly insurmountable challenges. Challenge 1. The aircraft, the B-25 Mitchell, is a twin-engine medium bomber. Wingspan, 67 feet, 7 inches. Loaded weight, 27,000 pounds. Normal takeoff run, 1,500 feet minimum. A carrier flight deck, 800 feet total, but only about 450 feet available for takeoff roll after spotting other aircraft. The math doesn't work. A B-25 needs 3 times more deck than available. Solution: strip everything non-essential. Remove the lower gun turret. Reduce crew from 6 to 5. Carry extra fuel in collapsible tanks where the turret was. Replace tail guns with painted broomsticks to fool enemy fighters. Take off with maximum power and hope the carrier's forward speed plus a headwind provides enough relative airspeed. Challenge 2. Range. Even with extra fuel tanks, the B-25's range barely covers the mission profile. Launch 450 miles from Japan, strike targets, then fly 1,200 miles to Chinese airfields. Total, roughly 2,400 miles, at the very edge of the aircraft's maximum range, with no reserves for combat, evasion, or navigation errors. If anything goes wrong, headwinds, getting lost, battle damage, the crews will run out of fuel before reaching China. There's no margin for error. Challenge 3. Navigation * celestial navigation over open ocean for 600 plus miles. Find Japan. Easy. It's big. Navigate to specific targets in cities never seen by the crews. Then navigate 1,200 miles to Chinese airfields never seen on maps. All this with 1942 technology, compass, dead reckoning, celestial sighting, luck. Challenge 4. Escape * after bombing. The crews must fly to China in darkness. Find airfields with no radio beacons or lights to avoid revealing their location to Japanese forces. Land safely on unknown fields, then make their way to friendly forces through Japanese-occupied territory. The odds of everyone making it, essentially 0. The odds of anyone making it, questionable. Challenge 5. Security * hundreds of sailors and airmen will know about this mission. The aircraft carrier must transit across the Pacific with bombers on deck, visible to anyone. Training must occur without revealing the target. One leak to Japanese intelligence dooms the mission and everyone on it. Doolittle accepts immediately. Within days, he's selecting volunteer crews. The entire proposition is volunteers. No one is ordered to go. Within weeks, modified B-25s arrive at Eglin Field, Florida, for training. The training is bizarre and specific. Practice taking off in impossibly short distances. Master low-altitude flying. Learn celestial navigation. Study target folders of Japanese cities. Memorize recognition features. Practice skip bombing techniques. None of the crews know their target until after they're at sea. They're told only, Important mission, extremely hazardous, volunteers only. 80 men volunteer. 16 crews are selected. On April 1st, 1942, 16 B-25s lift off from Alameda Naval Air Station, California, and land aboard the USS Hornet. The carrier immediately sets sail. Only after clearing port does Doolittle reveal their target, Tokyo. The USS Hornet, escorted by the carrier Enterprise, cruiser and destroyer screen, designated as Task Force 16, steams west across the Pacific in absolute radio silence. The plan calls for launching 450 miles from Japan, within B-25 range of targets, but hopefully beyond Japanese patrol zones. Launch at dusk on April 18th, strike targets at night, continue to China in darkness. But on the morning of April 18th, at first light, the task force encounters a Japanese picket boat, Nito Maru, a fishing vessel doubling as early warning radar picket. The cruiser USS Nashville immediately opens fire, sinking the picket boat. But the Japanese vessel had time to radio a warning: American carriers approaching. Admiral Halsey faces a critical decision. The task force is 650 miles from Japan, 200 miles beyond planned launch point. Launching now means the B-25s won't have enough fuel to reach Chinese airfields, but staying on course risks the entire task force. Japanese carriers could be launching strike aircraft right now. Halsey signals Hornet, launch planes, to Colonel Doolittle and his gallant command, good luck and God bless you. The decision means the mission parameters have just become even more impossible. The crews now must take off in rough seas, in daylight, losing the cover of darkness, and with even less fuel margin than planned. At 8:20 a.m., Doolittle's B-25 roars down the pitching deck. The carrier climbs a swell. At the peak, Doolittle pulls back on the controls. The B-25 drops off the bow, sinks toward the waves, then claws for altitude. He's airborne with feet to spare. 15 more B-25s follow at careful intervals. The deck crew has rehearsed the launch sequence dozens of times. Each bomber must be positioned precisely. The deck pitches violently in rough seas. One miscalculation means a bomber sliding into the ocean or crashing into the island's superstructure, but the Navy crew performs flawlessly. Within an hour, all 16 B-25s are airborne, formed up loosely, heading west toward Japan. Behind them, Task Force 16 turns east and runs for safety at maximum speed. The carriers have just put 16 Army bombers into the air over open ocean, 650 miles from enemy territory. There's no way to recover them. The Hornet and Enterprise must escape before Japanese forces find them. The Army crews are on their own. The flight to Japan takes nearly 5 hours. The B-25s fly at wave-top level to avoid radar detection. The crews fight fatigue, monitor fuel consumption with increasing anxiety, and wonder what awaits them over Japan. Around 1 p.m., the first crews sight the Japanese coast. What they see astonishes them: normal peacetime activity. Fishing boats, merchant vessels, no alert, no fighters scrambling to intercept. Japan, unconquered for 2,000 years, protected by divine winds, secure in its island geography, has never been attacked by air from sea. The concept doesn't exist in Japanese defensive doctrine. Patrol zones extend 200 to 300 miles from coast. American carriers should be 450 miles out minimum. The picket boat's warning has been discounted. Carriers can't be 650 miles out, can't launch bombers at that range. So when 16 American bombers roar over Japanese cities at rooftop level, the surprise is absolute. Doolittle's bomber strikes first, reaching Tokyo just after 1 p.m. Flying at 100 feet altitude, they streak over residential neighborhoods, people waving from rooftops thinking the planes are Japanese. The bombardier releases incendiary and high-explosive bombs over targets, including military installations and industrial facilities. 15 other crews follow at intervals, striking Tokyo, Yokohama, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, and Osaka. The bombs fall on factories, oil storage facilities, aircraft plants, and military installations. The destruction is minimal in military terms. A few buildings burn. Some factories suffer minor damage. Casualties are light, but the psychological impact is seismic. Air raid sirens wail across Japanese cities for the first time. People who felt perfectly safe suddenly face American bombers overhead. The illusion of invulnerability shatters. The Emperor's palace is within bombing range. The sacred home islands can be attacked. Japanese fighter pilots scramble desperately but arrive too late. The B-25s are already departing, heading west toward China. A few fighters manage to intercept, firing at the departing bombers. Several B-25s sustain minor damage, but all 16 escape Japanese airspace. Then the real crisis begins. As the B-25s head west toward China, fuel gauges drop into the red zone. The extra 200 miles of ocean crossing, the combat maneuvering over targets, headwinds, all consuming precious fuel. Doolittle and his crew calculate they won't make the planned airfields. None of the aircraft will. They're all going down short of safety, either ditching in the ocean or crash landing in Japanese-occupied China. Worse, weather deteriorates rapidly. Storms roll in. Visibility drops to zero. The darkness becomes absolute. The mountains of coastal China rise to 10,000 feet, invisible in clouds and rain. The Chinese airfields have no lights to avoid revealing their positions to Japanese forces. No radio beacons, no navigation aids. The crews must find the fields blind in storms at night, with fuel running out. One by one, the B-25s run out of fuel and go down. Crew 1, Doolittle, crew bails out over China in darkness and storm. All survive the parachute jumps, but land scattered across mountainous terrain. Chinese civilians find them and guide them to safety despite Japanese occupation forces searching the area. Crew 2 through 15, similar outcomes. Some crews bail out, some attempt crash landings. One crew makes it to Vladivostok, USSR, where they're interned for the war's duration. The Soviet Union isn't at war with Japan. Crew 8, Captain Ted Lawson, crashes into the sea off Chinese coast. Lawson's leg is nearly severed. Chinese fishermen rescue the crew and transport them inland, where a Chinese doctor performs emergency amputation without anesthesia, saving Lawson's life. Crew 16 lands in Japanese-occupied territory. 8 crew members are captured, 3 are executed, 1 dies of malnutrition, 4 survive as POWs until war's end. Of 80 men who launched, 3 are killed in crash landings. 8 are captured, 3 executed, 1 dies in captivity. 69 reach safety in China through the heroic assistance of Chinese civilians and guerrillas. The human cost to China is devastating. An estimated 250,000 Chinese civilians are killed by Japanese forces in retribution. Entire villages that aided the American airmen are destroyed. The Japanese military conducts a scorched earth campaign through the provinces where the raiders came down. This aspect of the mission remains controversial and painful, the success that cost so many innocent lives. The Doolittle raid's military impact is minimal. The physical damage to Japan is negligible. A few factories damaged, minor casualties, no significant industrial disruption. The 16 B-25s represent barely a pinprick, but the psychological and strategic impact is enormous and multi-layered. The news electrifies America. Headlines scream, Tokyo bombed. For 4 months, Americans have endured nothing but defeat. Suddenly, there's victory. The Japanese aren't invincible. American forces can strike the enemy homeland. Recruiting surges. War bond sales skyrocket. Industrial production accelerates. The psychological depression lifts. America believes it can win. President Roosevelt, asked at a press conference where the bombers came from, smiles and says, Shangri-La, the fictional Himalayan paradise from a popular novel. The answer becomes legend. The Navy later names a carrier USS Shangri-La in honor of the raid. Impact on Japanese strategy. Asterisk, the raid has catastrophic implications for Japanese war planning. If American carriers can strike Tokyo, the emperor is at risk. The home islands are vulnerable. This cannot be tolerated. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commanding the combined fleet, demands immediate action to extend the defensive perimeter eastward to push American carriers beyond striking range of Japan. This strategic imperative drives the decision to attack Midway Island. The Battle of Midway, fought just 6 weeks after the Doolittle raid, becomes Japan's decisive defeat. 4 Japanese fleet carriers are sunk. The strategic balance shifts irrevocably. Japan's offensive capacity is broken. Would Midway have occurred without the Doolittle raid? Historians debate, but the raid clearly accelerates and intensifies Japanese determination to eliminate the carrier threat, leading directly to the battle that changes the Pacific War. Impact on Japanese resources. Asterisk, Japan withdraws fighter squadrons from frontline operations to defend the home islands. Anti-aircraft guns are redeployed. Resources shift from offensive to defensive posture. This defensive reorientation weakens Japanese offensive capabilities at crucial moments. Impact on Chinese-American relations. Asterisk, the sacrifice of Chinese civilians. 250,000 killed in Japanese retribution creates complex legacies. China's assistance in rescuing and hiding the Doolittle raiders strengthens the alliance. But the horrific cost paid by innocent Chinese civilians raises moral questions that persist. The Doolittle raiders become American heroes. Jimmy Doolittle receives the Medal of Honor and is promoted 2 ranks to Brigadier General. He goes on to command the 8th Air Force in Europe, leading the strategic bombing campaign against Germany. The surviving raiders serve with distinction throughout the war. Many achieve flag rank. Their exploit becomes the stuff of legend, immortalized in books, films, and the collective American memory. Beginning in 1946, the surviving raiders hold annual reunions. In 1959, the city of Tucson presents them with a set of sterling silver goblets, one engraved with each raider's name. Each year at the reunion, the raiders perform a roll call, turning upside down the goblets of those who died in the previous year. The tradition continues for decades. As the numbers dwindle, one by one, the goblets turn. The reunions become increasingly poignant. The last public reunion occurs in 2013, when only 4 raiders remain alive. On November 9, 2013, the 4 surviving raiders, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cole, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Saylor, Staff Sergeant David Thatcher, and Master Sergeant George Larkin, meet for a final toast at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. They raise the last goblets, toast their fallen comrades, and drink from a bottle of cognac saved since 1896 for this final ceremony. The last surviving raider, Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cole, Doolittle's co-pilot, dies on April 9, 2019, at age 103. With his passing, the Doolittle raiders pass from living history to remembered history. The Doolittle raid was militarily insignificant. 16 aircraft, a few tons of bombs, minimal physical damage. By objective measures, it accomplished little. Yet it changed the Pacific War fundamentally. It transformed American morale at a critical moment. It forced Japanese strategic overreach that led to Midway. It demonstrated carrier aviation's potential for power projection. It proved that audacity and innovation could overcome material disadvantage. Most importantly, it showed that in modern warfare, psychological impact can outweigh physical destruction. The raid succeeded not because of what it destroyed, but because of what it demonstrated: American resolve, Japanese vulnerability, and the possibility of victory. Jimmy Doolittle, receiving the Medal of Honor, said he felt the mission was a failure because he lost all 16 aircraft and failed to reach the Chinese airfields. General Hap Arnold responded, "You're wrong, Jimmy. The mission succeeded beyond our wildest dreams." Arnold was right. The Doolittle raid's success wasn't measured in bombs dropped or targets destroyed. It was measured in hope restored, strategy altered, and the course of war changed. 80 men took off from a carrier deck knowing they'd never return to it. They flew impossible distances in modified bombers held together with determination and luck. They struck an enemy that had seemed invincible, and though the mission cost some their lives and others their freedom, they accomplished something no amount of firepower alone could achieve. They proved Japan could be beaten. On April 18, 1942, Jimmy Doolittle's B-25 lifted off the Hornet's deck in just 16 seconds. Those 16 seconds of flight transformed from defensive desperation to offensive determination. Those 16 seconds announced to the world that America was fighting back. The Pacific War had 19 more months of desperate fighting ahead, but after the Doolittle raid, the outcome was no longer in doubt. America would win. The question was only when and at what cost. 16 seconds, 16 aircraft, 80 heroes, one mission that changed everything.